Good morning, 9:40 on 1227. I'm live again for the first time in a couple of weeks. I'm hanging out and doing some editing here, and I figured I'd just go live while doing editing. Maybe somebody will show up. We can have a conversation about. I'm going to be changing my content away from political stuff to more stuff like this. This is Graham Hancock. If you don't know who he is, you got to look him up. It's pretty obvious. You probably know who Graham Hancock is, and of course you know
King's
who.
Chamber weighs 70 tons each. Now, Egyptologists will tell you that, they could move heavy blocks because they put them on wet sand and they push them along on wet sand. Well, maybe if you're just at ground level, that will do. But when you're 350 feet above the ground, as you are in the King's Chamber, that won't do at all. I don't know how they did it. All I know is they did it.
Anyway, it's Joe Rogan, so I'm going to be doing excerpts like this from now on and kind of moving away from political content, like mainstream political content. I'm going to be hanging out here. And, let's see. Get the chat up just in case somebody shows up. I'll just widen this out. There. Anyway. So we're just hanging out and doing some editing here and seeing where this
transitioned into residential housing for a while, and then it was bought by some entity that I believe operated it for a while as like a celebrity rehab center.
You're right.
And but most recently, it was just in the LA Times just within the last few weeks that Jared Leto has now purchased it as presumably as a private residence or maybe as an investment property. I don't know what he plans on doing with it.
So we've got this strange covert military installation looming over Los Angeles. In Santa Monica, we have the Rand Corporation, another spooky entity. This all looms over LA and the burgeoning entertainment scene, which takes us to the real point of the story, which is the rock and roll that came out of Laurel Canyon. And certainly the most famous or enigmatic figure to emerge from that scene would have to be Jim Morrison. In Santa Monica, we have the Rand Corporation, the lead singer of the Doors entity. This all looms over LA and the burgeoning entertainment scene, that strange song, which takes us to the real point of the story, which is the rock and roll that came out of Laurel Canyon. And certainly the most
the curious thing about
famous
him
or
is
enigmatic
that,
figure to emerge from that scene would have to be Jim Morrison. In Santa Monica, we
a very high-ranking Navy admiral, which that part was known prior to my work on this book. But what I discovered, which had not been previously reported, is that not just was he a Navy admiral, but he just happened to be the Navy admiral who oversaw the Gulf of Tonkin incident. He was the commanding officer of the ships involved in that notorious incident, which of course led immediately to the passage of the Tonkin Gulf Resolution and then to the full-scale involvement of ground troops in Vietnam and ultimately the deaths of some 60,000 Americans and countless millions of Vietnamese and Laotian and Cambodian people, all of which was a direct result of this so-called Tonkin Gulf incident, which Jim Morrison's father was a key figure, to say the least, in orchestrating that whole incident that quickly resulted in the U.S. being engulfed in a very, very bloody quagmire over there. And that happened just like within a year or so of the sun emerging on the Laurel Canyon Sunset Strip scene as this larger-than-life icon of the anti-war, peace movement crowd. So there was a very curious juxtaposition there, to say the least, that you have the father sailing off to help choreograph this incident that drug America into this bloody quagmire, and then the son almost simultaneously emerging on the scene as this larger-than-life icon of the anti-war crowd. And never mentioning, of course, who his father was throughout his years of fame. He conspicuously avoided ever mentioning who his father was and what a key role he had played. And
we can only guess as to why that was, but there's a picture in the book that shows Jim, the young Jim, the collegiate Jim, very clean cut, preppy almost, with his father on the bridge of the what's the name of the ship?
Bonhomme Richard, I believe it was.
Bonhomme Richard.
Bonhomme Richard, which was the ship in the Gulf of Tonkin incident.
Correct, yeah.
So it gets even weirder because you discuss the fact that Jim, and I've had other people who are big Doors fans kind of confirm this to me independently, Jim was not really a likely candidate to be a rock star, and he wasn't even a musician.
Yeah, he had no musical background at all. By his own account, he had never had much interest in music, even as a fan. He said he'd only been to like 1 or 2 concerts, in his life. He didn't really listen to a lot of music. He never viewed himself as a singer. Never learned to read or write music. Never learned to play an instrument. Even after he achieved fame with the Doors, he never learned to read or write music or play an instrument. By his own account, he was not. He'd had no musical training and had never viewed himself as a musician or singer-songwriter. And as you say, not long before he emerged as this figure that we see here, was a very much different Jim Morrison, very clean-cut, collegiate, almost unrecognizable. Seeing his father off as he was about to leave, I think sailed out of San Diego for the Gulf of Tonkin, and within a year he had completely transformed himself physically and emerged as this rock star, just out of nowhere. It's just an amazing physical transformation and an amazing transformation from someone who had expressed no interest in music whatsoever to just like overnight becoming this huge international star.
He was the Doors, the whole scene that they emerged from, largely considered to be the leaders of an anti-war movement. Obviously, we know what happened with the Doors as they continued, but what blew me away, Dave, Jim died the same day his father gave a speech on the decommissioning of the ship that he was the rear admiral on during the Gulf of Tonkin.
Yeah, it was very strange.
That's really weird.
Very strange timing, to say the least.
It's almost like both of their missions were done.
Yeah, to some extent, yeah. Jim Morrison was just a fascinating guy, in a very short period of time from like 1964 to 1971, there were like 3 separate Jim Morrisons, really. He just had a remarkable ability to reinvent himself, from this clean-cut collegiate kid to this this Greek god rock star, and then in the later years to a very overweight, heavily bearded, reclusive poet. And you look at pictures of Jim in these 3 eras, and which were very close together in time, and he looks like 3 completely different people. It's extraordinary, really, the capacity he had to reinvent himself, which is one thing that's given rise to various theories that he didn't actually die in Paris, but reinvented himself once again and went on under a new persona, which is not beyond the realm of possibility. But
it's one of those things that I never gave too much thought to. I didn't buy it, but after having read your book, having spoken to other friends who are Doors devotees, who knows? Jim Morrison, amazing rock and roll performer. Let's move on, because there were so many bands that emerged out of the Laurel Canyon scene. And one of the things that we're going to find that is the primary premise of the book is almost all of these bands had within their family background military intelligence, some form of...
Given rise to various theories that he didn't actually die in Paris, but reinvented himself once again and
friends who are Doors devotees. Who knows? Jim Morrison, amazing rock and roll performer. Let's move on. Because there were so many bands that emerged out of the Laurel Canyon scene. And one of the things that we're going to find that is the primary premise of the book is almost all of these bands had within their family background military intelligence, some form of military ties, political ties. I'm going to name some of the bands out of Laurel Canyon because there's so many. The Byrds, The Doors, Buffalo Springfield, the Monkees, the Beach Boys, Steppenwolf, Love, Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention, the Turtles, the Mamas and the Papas, the Flying Burritos Brothers, the Eagles, America. There was the singer-songwriters, Jackson Browne, Joni Mitchell, James Taylor, Linda Ronstadt, Carole King. It's nuts.
Yeah, it's amazing how much talent poured out of such a tiny geographic area over such a very short period of time.
It's remarkable. One of the things I was going to ask you, just so people get a grasp of what we're talking about here, I'm going to ask you about a couple of people, and you tell me what their relationship was to these military backgrounds, because some of these people were, I couldn't believe it. Papa John Phillips of the Mamas and the Papas.
He was the son of a career Marine Corps officer who also various other members of his family were very closely tied to the military as well. His mother, his older sister, and his first wife were all career Defense Department employees. So, I mean, pretty much his entire family, everyone around him was a career military person, and he himself was initially prepped for a military career. I believe he was a West Point appointee or Annapolis, one of the two. I get confused because so many of these people have such very similar backgrounds. So yeah, his entire family pretty much was from the military background, and not only that, but his first wife was also a direct descendant of John Adams, the second president of the United States, which is another thing that you will find is that some of these people, in addition to having a military or military intelligence background, a lot of them kind of come from what we could call like royal sort of blue blood bloodlines, so to speak. That's another commonality that a lot of these people share.
Well, speaking of blue bloods, the most unlikely person, David Crosby of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and he was in the Byrds as well.
He was in the Byrds.
Talk about David Crosby, because he's an enigmatic character.
Yeah, he was a Byrd, one of the founding members of the Byrds, the original members, and the guy who emerged as the biggest star. I mean, the name that we remember today, most people don't remember Gene Clark and Chris Hillman and even Roger McGuinn and Gene Clark is and the drummer was Michael Clark. Most of them are, unless you're a real hardcore fan of that era, they're long forgotten. But David Crosby, of course, still lives on as an iconic figure. And like a lot of the people, most of the people who emerged from that scene as the big iconic figures, he has a very curious family background. Yeah, his full name is David Van Cortlandt Crosby. And he is a direct descendant of three interrelated families: the Van Cortlandts, the Van Rensselaer, and the Van Schuyler families. And if you look them up, bounce around Wikipedia for a while, you will find that his family tree includes just people occupying virtually every position of prominence that you can imagine, back to the founding of the country. Revolutionary War generals, Civil War generals, judges, senators, congressmen, governors, just everything short of the president. Various members of his family have occupied for well over 200 years now. So yeah, definitely a blue blood type of family. And his father, did naval intelligence work during World War II. So.
Well, Stephen Stills in the same band was an interesting character as well.
Stephen Stills was actually in Buffalo Springfield.
Yeah.
They
That's
were
right,
they were
sorry.
like
Right.
they were sort of they were kind of the first two out of the gate, the first two kind of folk rock bands that really set this whole thing off. And of course they then later joined forces as Crosby, Stills and Nash, but. Yeah, Stephen Stills, his father appears to have been some type of a covert operative. He's described in various biographies as a mercenary or soldier of fortune or various euphemisms, and he spent a lot of time bopping around various hot spots in Central and South America where, just happened to be places where we had a lot of covert operations going on, and so Stephen moved around a lot, and to various grew up partially in military bases and military schools in and around Central America. So once again, one of the person who emerged as the sort of biggest figure from the original band Buffalo Springfield. Yeah, once again has the same, which we find time after time after
Frank
time.
Zappa.
Frank Zappa, according to the leader of the Mothers of Invention. Not a band that ever really achieved the commercial success and popularity that a lot of these other bands do, and still to this day you won't really hear much of their music on the radio, almost never, but yet a hugely influential with other musicians, just viewed as a
Incredible
hugely-
musician.
Yeah, incredibly talented guy. We wore all the hats. Songwriter, musician, producer, arranger. He could do it all. Phenomenally talented and influential guy. And also he started up a couple of record labels in Laurel Canyon.
That's right.
And introduced a lot of the other. He was the guy who got a lot of other bands their start.
Alice Cooper.
Alice Cooper, yeah, strangely enough, was, not really thought of as being a part of that Laurel Canyon scene, but yeah, sure enough, he was. The band was. But Zappa's father was a chemical warfare engineer, initially assigned to the Edgewood Arsenal, which is where Frank was born and spent the first 7 years of his life. They actually lived in military housing on the base, and he went to school and lived the first 7 years of his life at the home of U.S. chemical warfare, strangely enough. Yet again, rather curious, family background.
Just a few more, because we've got much to cover, but Jackson Browne, Graham Parsons, America.
America, all three of them were sons of Air Force officers who met on a Air Force base in the UK that was known as being an intelligence outpost. So all their fathers were most likely Air Force intelligence officers. They were certainly Air Force officers. And they first got together on a military base. Jackson Browne was born on a military base in post-war Germany during Reconstruction. His warfare engineer, initially assigned to the Edgewood Arsenal, which is where Frank was born and spent the first 7 years of his life. They actually lived in military housing on the base, and he went to school and lived the first 7 years of his life at the home of U.S. chemical warfare, strangely enough. Yet again, rather curious, family background.
Just a few more, because we've got much to cover, but Jackson Browne, Graham Parsons, America.
America, all three of them were sons of Air Force officers who met on a Air Force base in the UK that was known as being an intelligence outpost. So all their fathers were most likely of U.S. chemical warfare, strangely enough. Yet again, rather curious, family background.
Just a few more, because we've got much to cover, but Jackson Browne, Graham Parsons, America.
America, all three of them were sons of Air Force officers who met on a Air Force base in the UK that was known as being an intelligence outpost. So all their fathers were most likely Air Force intelligence officers. They were certainly Air Force officers. And yeah, they first got together on a military base. Jackson Browne was born on a military base in post-war Germany during Reconstruction. His dad was one of the, likely an OSS operative, who, with that being the organization at the time, prior to the CIA, that was in charge of Reconstruction efforts and the denazification, process in post-war Germany, and that's where Jackson Browne was born. And I don't remember. I think you mentioned another one, but I'm not sure.
Graham Parsons, another kind of blue blood type character in a way.
He was very much of a blue blood. Yeah, his family originally owned the majority of the citrus groves in Florida and Georgia, and a very, very wealthy clan that also included the Hershey family and the founder of the Hershey's chocolate empire. So yeah, once again, he came from a very, very blue blood family that had deep roots, going back to the founding of the country. And his father, who he didn't know for all that long, because he died when he was fairly young, shot, listed as a suicide, although that's kind of questionable. And he was military. He was, I think, a fighter pilot. And then the guy who actually raised him, Robert Parsons, who gave him his name, his adoptive father, appears to have been an intelligence operative also. He was very closely involved with training exile Cuban groups in Florida Everglades to topple the Castro regime. And it's not a big mystery who was in charge of running all those operations. So if that's what his father was doing, then obviously he had some kind of a CIA connection. So.
Okay, so we've got all of these people that moved to Los Angeles, and you make the point in the book that at this point in Los Angeles history, it was not the music center that it would become. At that point, it was New York, Nashville, Detroit.
Detroit, yeah.
Those were the primary music centers.
Those were the main hubs, yeah.
If you were going to want to do popular music of that period, those are one of the places you probably would have gone, but they all come out here. Many of these people actually know each other. They went to school together, or they're on the various Army bases, and then they put together bands. For example, the Byrds. You point out in the book that the Byrds, frankly, were not that good in the beginning, and they didn't really have much gear. Did they share a space with Vito Polakis or something? Because that whole
they used his
Byrds,
studio as a rehearsal space.
Vito Polakis?
Yeah,
tell us about that, because they just kind of
accounts.
blew up out of nothing, and there's weird people in the band that don't know how to play.
Yeah, it was. If you really look at the beginning, the genesis of these bands, it doesn't really seem very organic, in the sense that these were just a lot of guys that were friends and fellow musicians that had similar musical interests and got together and decided to form a band, and just sort of a natural progression of things. This was more like some of these bands had definitely had the appearance of being cast, and the Byrds, which was the first one out of the gate, was probably the most obvious in that regard, in that their entire rhythm section literally did not know how to play their instruments. Their drummer had never picked up a pair of drumsticks in his life. He had played like bongo drums or something, and their bass player was a very accomplished musician, but he was a bluegrass mandolin player, and yet he was the guy that they drafted to be in the world's first folk rock band, to play bass, guitar. I mean, that makes no sense to me whatsoever, that, and despite the fact that they, most of them did not really know how to play their instruments and did not have, professional quality equipment to even perform with, they were very quickly signed and provided with studio space and rehearsal space, recording space, got brand new instruments, and all of a sudden they were a band. And
well, you mentioned in the book that not only did these bands spring up very quickly, but the club scene within Hollywood blew up. All of a sudden, you've got Pandora's Box and these various clubs I guess, the London Fog.
London Fog, the Whiskey A Go-Go, the Kaleidoscope, a whole bunch. I mean, there was a bunch of them, some of which, still remain to this day. The Troubadour, I think, is still there. And is the Whiskey still there?
The Whiskey and the Troubadour still exists. But what you're saying is these bands come about very quickly.
Very quickly.
Dubious musicianship initially, but an infrastructure builds up around them.
Correct, yeah.
Clubs to play, venues to play, a radio station to play their music. The record labels, usually not ones to immediately fork out some cash immediately, are signing these bands right and left. And then you describe also another misnomer about kind of hippie culture in general was these characters, Vito Polakis' group, and how they kind of created the whole hippie aesthetic, and what was their role in making the bands further popular?
Yeah, they are widely credited with people who were on the scene at the time as being the world's go-go, the Kaleidoscope, a whole bunch. I mean, there was a bunch of them, some of which, still remain to this day. The Troubadour, I think, is still there. And is the Whiskey still there?
The Whiskey and the Troubadour still exists. But what you're saying is these bands come about very quickly.
Very quickly.
Dubious musicianship initially, but an infrastructure builds up around them.
Correct, yeah.
Clubs to play, venues to play, a radio station to play their music. The record labels, usually not ones to immediately fork out some cash immediately, are signing these.
Is the Whiskey still there?
The Whiskey and the Troubadour still exists. But what you're saying is these bands come about very quickly.
Very quickly.
Dubious musicianship initially, but an infrastructure builds up around them.
Correct, yeah.
Clubs to play, venues to play, a radio station to play their music. The record labels, usually not ones to immediately fork out some cash immediately, are signing these bands right and left. And then you describe also another misnomer about kind of hippie culture in general was these characters, Vito Polakis' group, and how they kind of created the whole hippie aesthetic, and what was their role in making the bands further popular?
Yeah, they are widely credited with people who were on the scene at the time as being the world's first hippies, the people who really started sporting the hairstyles and the clothing styles and just the whole attitude and whatnot that would become known as, the hippies. Or they called themselves freaks, but very quickly became known under other names, hippies and flower children and whatnot. And he's the guy. His troupe is largely credited with creating all that. And he was an older guy. He was already in his 50s, considerably older than the bands that he was hanging out with and the other people in his troupe. And basically, he led this dance troupe that was wildly popular in the clubs on the Strip. So much so that they'd be let in free to the clubs because the owners realized that they were the ones that were drawing the crowds. And they would put on these just wild and crazy dance performances that were just, that nobody had ever seen before. Here come these people with these crazy hairstyles and clothing styles and doing these dance moves that nobody's ever seen before.
I'm kind of picturing the twirling girls at like Dead concerts or something.
And a lot of people have acknowledged that they were one of the main, that they were the initial draw because these bands were unknown. They had just arrived in town, and all of a sudden they're getting signed and they're getting recording contracts, but nobody knows who they are. And all these clubs are just popping up like mushrooms along the Strip, but they're all new too. They don't have an existing clientele, and people have no real compelling reason to go out to these clubs to hear these new bands that they never heard of. And one of the things that really drew the crowds initially and that put these bands on the map was this hippie dance crew that would go out and dance at all of their performances and draw the crowds in because it was very heavily publicized that if you go out to these new clubs, you can see these crazy dancers doing all these wild things, and they serve the additional purpose of creating a big distraction so that people didn't necessarily notice that the music being played on the stage maybe didn't sound quite as good as it did on the radio.
Well, Okay, so in the clubs, which sprang up immediately, we've got these freaks, which basically kind of set the tone for the hippie movement, which didn't really start in Haight-Ashbury. It started here in Los Angeles. Then we also have the entrance of the Young Turks. Explain to us who the Young Turks are.
Yeah, that was the other factor. The Young Turks were the young, up-and-coming Hollywood crowd. The beautiful people of Hollywood who were on the rise. People like Jack Nicholson, Warren Beatty, Peter and Jane Fonda, Sharon Tate, Bruce Dern, Dennis Hopper, various others who I can't think of their names right now. But anyway, they were all very much a part of the scene too, and a lot of them lived in and or hung out in Laurel Canyon. And
Hey, Peacock. I was just wrapping up some editing here, and I just thought I'd go live to see if I could get somebody to say hi. Hi, how you doing? Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. I'm looking at this Laurel Canyon stuff here. If you don't know what it is, video should be up today. I'm going to do 2 parts where they talk about the rock stars and then they talk about the movie stars. You finally caught my stream. Well, I haven't done a stream in a couple of weeks. The last one I did was kind of lame. As is this one. But I'm hoping Brazil shows up because I wanted to shout out to him for kicking my ass 6 times, I think, or 5 times in chess. The guy acts like he's a 1200, but I think he's like a 1900. I think he's lying. So, yeah. Not much here. Just had a pretty laid-back Christmas. And now I have the week off, kind of. I have a little night gig that I have to do every night, but I have the week off during the day, so hopefully going to be putting some more content up. Just can't seem to move forward, man. I get up to 367, fall to 365. But anyway, yep. Gonna kind of be changing my Tim C. What's up? Oh, I know. What fascinating topic. Are you being serious with the Laurel Canyon thing here, or? I think there's a slight delay, but I just came on live, Tim, because I'm editing this video about Laurel Canyon. It's like a 6-year-old video, but Whoopi Goldberg. Yeah, I know. You reverse that Whoopi Goldberg statement and she'd be done. Yeah, well, she got suspended for a couple of days. White on white. Typically, Slavs are not white, so Jews are not considered to be white. I don't think so, but I mean, I just that's what people say. So yeah, that was one of the dumbest comments ever. It wasn't racially motivated, is what she actually said. That the Holocaust was not racially motivated. Yeah, ask Adolf about that. Whoopi. Yeah, that's fireable. I mean, come on. And she doesn't stop. I think she just said something stupid again. I haven't looked at it yet. Where's Tim C? Yeah, he comes on and says fascinating topic and then disappears. But interesting to see where this one goes here. Oh, super funny. I think the Doors and oh yeah, I mean I was always a huge Doors and Morrison fan. I couldn't wait. I was in high school when the Doors movie came out with Val Kilmer and all that. But you look back and yes, all those bands. It turns out all these bands like that they're mentioning. I'll have my video up. You can watch the original video. I'll put the link in the it's the Lip TV too. But anyway, yeah, they were all tools. Yeah. And they're talking about, I didn't know this, but like the Byrds and some of these bands, they had absolutely, I knew Morrison had no talent at all musically. Awesome singer, awesome stage presence, and all that charisma. But yeah, like the Byrds, the drummer couldn't, like this guy says, he never even picked up a pair of drumsticks. So how they even got big overnight, it's like, and it gets into how they all had especially Morrison, military fathers and intelligence people in their family. They get traced back to presidents like Adams. I mean, Rockefellers, whatever. But like all these people just happened to converge on Laurel Canyon right in the late 60s, right when the anti-war movement was happening, and they all just came out of nowhere. And they all have military ties in their family. So it's really interesting shit. It's not new to me. It's been a while since I've seen a video like this on YouTube. I'm surprised it's even here. I'm surprised it's still up. I posted a Jeff C video and got struck because he was talking about the you-know-what. So I don't know. I think you're pretty safe on stuff like this. But so that's where I am. My next video is going to be about this guy. I'm going to do a little montage of him talking. He's one of my favorites, Graham Hancock. So I'm going to start doing stuff like that. And less just mainstream political shit. Tim C. Yeah, the PSYOP comment you made there is exactly what this Dave McGowan was saying. It's to delegitimize the anti-war movement. Yeah, you said demonize, but anyway, yeah. Morrison is Rush Limbaugh? No, dude. What's his name? Bill Hicks is. Oh, Rush Limbaugh. I was thinking of Alex Jones. Morrison is. Never heard of that one. That sounds good. Morrison is Rush Limbaugh. Well, Rush Limbaugh's now gone too, so if that's the case, then Morrison finally died. Never heard that one. Well, let's do it here. Probably not going to find anything. Jim Morrison is Rush Limbaugh. Is that a thing that's not coming up, dude? Kevin Levine. Look at those pictures. I'm going to have to look into this. In light of Rush Limbaugh's passing, at least he lived long enough to see Biden inaugurated. Oh, geez, written by a lib. I've gotten a number of hits on this post. So Morrison is Rush Limbaugh. Here's a great article. I just can't wait to get into. The U.S. military should be the ultimate meritocracy. It's all about Biden's new, the woke military. That should be fun to get into. What'd you find out about Rogan and Jones today? I'm kind of getting sick of Jones polluting all of this stuff. They're using Jones as a whipping boy to like bring down everybody that's even talked to him, like Rogan. So what'd you find out? Mitch McConnell. Yeah. I haven't seen any actual footage of Mitch in the last. Well, I've been doing the Christmas thing over the last week, but yeah, him and who's the other guy? McCarthy should be gotten rid of. Still waiting to hear about AJ and Rogan from Tim C, though.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Now, the Great Pyramid of Giza is probably the most stunning of all these ancient structures. And the stones are immense, and some of them were cut from a quarry that's hundreds of miles away.
By the way, this guy's book is called.
How do
his
you think
best
they
book
did
was
that?
called
Well,
Fingerprints
some of
the
them,
Gods.
the granite
Fingerprints of the Gods.
in the Great Pyramid comes from more than 500 miles to the south. If you look at the famous King's Chamber, its walls and its roof are the ceiling of the King's.
Oh, this omnibus bill. Yeah. Do Democrats ever vote Republican? No, but we always see Republicans going across the aisle and voting for these crazy things like, let's send, what is it, 2 billion, 2.7 billion to Iran for gender studies shit. Oh, God, this administration is just such a joke. The omnibus. How much is the omnibus bill? $1.7 trillion. What does omnibus even mean? I mean, seriously. And who is Novogradac? Gradak? $70.5 billion in gross appropriations for HUD. $325 million for the CDFI fund, but no community development. Yeah. Pretty sad. And they did pass the bill. Oh, really? Okay. Oh, here we go. Breaking it down. Oh, this is just HUD. That's all kind of over my pay grade. Oh, this is all about HUD. Substance use disorder. Funding for mental health. I mean, I wonder if that falls under the whole gender studies thing. 1.7 trillion bucks, and we got homeless people in Washington D.C. You know, kind of funny, isn't it? One of the Republican senators is Jim In. Screwed us over, and he retires next year. Yeah, so blow up the whole house and then retire and go golf. Yeah. Very interesting this next year is going to be. How much worse it gets. Tim C. I'm still waiting to hear about Rush and AJ. If I could get Brazil in here, I'd have 3 legit chatters in here. That would be awesome. But who knows? He's probably got a job. Jim Inhofe. Yeah. Senior United States Senator from Oklahoma. He's a Republican, huh? Well, at least we had him for a second. I'll be doing this stuff all week, just randomly coming on in the morning. Not randomly, but like each morning, just coming on and sitting here and waiting for chat. 10:23. I'm going to stay on until about 10:30 here, and then get back to editing my Laurel Canyon video, and then doing housework. Oh, he's back. Already responded. Can't see it. You said finding out some weird stuff about AJ and Rogan, and that's the last I saw. Tim. Interesting if they blocked. Nah, I'm not sure they're not blocking. I've become way less paranoid about the YouTube algorithms since getting a couple of strikes and seeing why I get strikes and why I get, well, copyright shit is just my fault. I mean, just don't put music in your videos if you don't want it to get a copyright claim. But now I'm a lot less paranoid about, and a lot less afraid of like the ability of their AI algorithms. Because that Jeff C video I posted, it's still up because he posted it before they got tough on that thing, which means they're not going back and continuously looking at him. But when I post a new video, now that it's since the rules were applied, I got struck, but he still stays up. So they're not that all powerful with their algorithms. Just stay away from keywords that begin with the letter C. Yeah, ooh, you could look at it that way. I got one sub for every day of the year, except this channel's been up since, well, I mean, I guess really I've only been doing it since July. I had about 24 in July, so yeah, but a lot of those subs came from 2 videos, which I've lost a lot of subs, and I hope they're the ones that subscribe because of those 2 videos, the Bill Burr videos. I'm hoping on, like I just lost 2 the other day. I'm hoping some of them are, going away because I don't want them anyway, if that's what they thought. I want people who actually want to see my shit. So, that's why I'm going to change my... I mean, you look at my recent videos, they're always about 30 to 50 people, if I'm lucky. Every now and then over 100. But I need to start doing more interesting topics. Like I covered the Jennifer Lawrence thing, and like within 24 hours, like 18,000 other people had covered the Jennifer Lawrence thing. So if somebody can go watch Tim Pool or they can watch me, well, who are they going to choose, right? I'm just posting shit that everybody else is posting, not working. Yeah, I want it to grow too. That's why I'm changing. A little bit, gradually. You might see some Bible verses up here every now and then. You wrote... I already... No. The last thing I see is I already responded, can't you see it? And now you said I wrote my reply again, can you see it? No. Tim C, just give me some like Doors lyrics or something. Just something random, and I want to see if it comes up. Or Billy Joel, I don't care. Because that's weird. OC, what was the email address I gave you? Because I want to give Tim C the same address so he can email me if he wants to. I don't want to get I have too many Gmail addresses and I don't want to get them confused. So, was it, I think it was Mesa. So, yeah, OC's not seeing any replies either. At least regarding that. That's so weird. I swear this whole live stream better not get a strike for some weird jacked up reason. I haven't said anything. The song email, what does that mean? Oh! After 9 days I let the horse run free, is that one? I think that's what you're talking about, which is, ironically, the band America, which is one of the bands that this guy's talking about. I still love that song, I always will. Oh, you were talking about Elon? Okay, yeah. Please, anybody listening, I know it's just you two, but no Elon talk and no jab or, the C word. Don't talk about either one of them in here because, yeah, we want to stay away from Elon. I know that's bad. We can't even have a friggin' conversation because you're afraid of getting shut down or shutting me down. But man, try posting it with, misspellings, and his name is now, I don't know, Andy? Andy Star? Like Andy asterisk, and then we know who you're talking about? Geez, you can't even mention. Well, you just mentioned his name in that comment, and I saw it. But if it's actual information, that's probably why they're blocking it. Now, they're not going to hold me accountable for stuff that people put in my chat, so that's probably why they just block it. They don't let it go post and then strike me because some random guy who I may or may not, because I might not even know you. You might be a mole. You might just come in here and then post a bunch of shit, and so they can't hold me accountable for that. So that's why they just blocked it. I don't think. I'd love to know what you said, though. I'm going to put my email in the chat here. If OC can, yeah, okay, so that's the one. It's oh, well, I wonder what you said, Tim. So it's after 9 days, I let the horse run free at gmail.com. Just paste that into an email to me there, because I'm dying to know what you said. So that'll be the email I attach to this channel. Nothing going on there. Oh, she says it's a legit email. It is. Matter of fact, it might be this one. No, that's my actual email. Ugh. Well, as I said, it's 10:30, so I'm going to end this now. But guys, hey, thanks so much for showing up, and Tim C especially, sticking around and giving your 2 cents. But give me a shout out, give me an email at this after 9 days. You can just, copy paste that email. I know it's ridiculous, but yeah, send me that, and then OC and both of you, let's make it grow. 2 people today, 3 people tomorrow, 5 people by next week. Who knows? And I'll see you then. Say goodbye. And MP5K for Christmas. Oh, nice. Sorry. Oh, get that off the screen. Okay, that's nice though. Awesome. Good to hear it. Yeah, man, who got you that? Dad, wife? Do you have a wife? You're kind of young. Yeah, that's nice.
On the first part of the journey, I was looking at all the life. There were plants and birds and rocks and things. There was sand and hills and rain.
Nice. Well, have fun with it, man, and buy lots of accessories. Get a good scope. Yada yada. I gotta do that. I don't have one. But I've got other stuff to spend money on that is more important and like immediate before I can have fun. So, but anyway, hey, OC, see you tomorrow. I'll be on again. Probably same time, around 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock your time. We'll do it again. Keep an eye out for my Laurel Canyon video I'll be putting up later today. Let's see how that does. I'm going to condense these guys' conversation down so you can see it a little bit better and do some commentary on it. So, other than that, peace. Good to know. You're on, and let's just keep it moving. All right, peace out. I'm going to leave you with this.
The first thing I met was a fly with a buzz and the sky with no clouds. The heat was hot and the ground was dry, but the air was full of sound. I've been through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can remember your name, because there ain't no one for to give you no pain. After 2 days in the desert sun, my skin began to turn red. After 3 days in the desert fun, I was looking at a riverbed, and the story it told of a river that flowed made me sad to think it was dead. You see, I've been through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can't remember your name, 'cause there ain't no one for to give you no pain. After 9 days, I let the horse run free, 'cause the desert had turned to sea. There were plants and birds and rocks and things. There was sand and hills and rings.
Facebook message. Whoops. Tell me what my Facebook looks like. Because I haven't been on Facebook in a while. What's my profile picture? Let's see. See if I can even Facebook. Log in or sign up. Come on, I should be logged in on this computer. Is it the one with the planet? Let's see. A week ago. This guy I haven't seen in a while. Oh, nice. What's that mean? Anyway, I'm getting confused or getting a little bit distracted. Yeah, FB. I'll check it out. But otherwise, send it to me in that email I put in the comments up there. After 9 days, I'll let the horse run free. At Gmail. That's right. Here. That. So I'll check for your FB message, and Tim, I'll be back tomorrow. All right? This is MH signing out.